Welcome to the world of Pokemon, where there is so much to see, new monsters to fight, and new Pokemon to capture. Welcome, Naofumi Iwatani. What starter would you like to pick to continue this journey? Starter? What the hell is even going on? Starter Pokemon? Like that game? How am I even supposed to choose? Who am I supposed to choose? I guess I don't have a choice. I guess I'll just go with you. Yo, what is good, everybody? It's your boy Golden Falls Golden What If, whatever you want to call me, and I am back. I'm back with a brand new What If. What if Naofumi was the legendary Pokemon trainer? I'm extremely excited for this What If, and I've been hyping up this What If in my head and figuring out certain things I want to do, and I think y'all are going to enjoy this a lot. So, without further ado, I'm not going to waste any more of your time, and we're going to get right into the What If. Let's get it. After Naofumi was seemingly sent to a brand new world, he's now standing with the choice of a multitude of starters. He goes down the list and he decides to pick one starter out of all of them, especially not really knowing anything about these so-called Pokemon. And he chooses the Pokemon by the name of Mudkip. Shout out to my member Wikipedia. He was the first to respond, and that is going to be our starter. So let's just get right back into it. After Naofumi chooses his starter, he appears right by three other people in a nice glimmering yellow light, and he looks to his left to see three people. And what he sees is someone with a spear, someone with a sword, and someone with a bow. He's confused to see this. He really doesn't even remember what happened prior, but he does get a glimpse of what happened. He remembers reading a book that said the 4 cardinal heroes, but he came here with Pokemon. He's not so sure how that even works, but he looks at his belt to see that there's one Pokeball on his belt, and he is able to actually enter his inventory to see that he has 5 potions and 10 Pokeballs. He's not so sure exactly how all this would work, but he assumes it's very similar to something he's seen in his homeworld. Maybe he can injure Pokemon and then capture them. But is there even Pokemon in this world? How would that even work? Can he capture quote-unquote monsters? He's not even really sure, but he'll have to contemplate this later. As they introduce themselves to each other, he learns the names of the other 3 heroes, Ren, Itsuki, and Motoyasu. He then begins to speak with the knight that is going to address them, basically saying that they are the 4 cardinal heroes and that the king wants to speak with him, or speak with them. They arrive in the throne room, and the king begins to speak with the 4 cardinal heroes, but looks at Naofumi in confusion. Who is this person? He doesn't have a shield, but maybe that's for the best. He begins to explain what mankind has been going through. The waves, a series of demonic invasions, and frankly, it's been terrorizing their world, and they need the heroes' help. The heroes, other than Naofumi, begin to say that they better be compensated, in which Naofumi just kinda shrugs, saying that he agrees that, frankly, this is going to be a hard job, so they do need to be compensated, in which the king says of course they would be, but for now it's getting late and he wants them to go take a rest in a hotel that they have. So they do just that, and they begin speaking to each other about how this world works, but Naofumi brings up that, frankly, he doesn't remember much from his world. When he was sent here, it's like he forgot everything. He's not so sure. Maybe his world is exactly what his powers are, but even that is not very clear. All he remembers really is reading a book, and then he was gone. They begin to question what is he exactly, because everyone has these medieval weapons, but Naofumi has balls? Pokeballs, supposedly? Naofumi says he's not even sure what these are, but supposedly he can catch Pokemon. Actually, before he was quote-unquote summoned here, he was given an interface. He begins explaining the interface, that there were tons of choices in terms of starters and starter Pokemon. He throws his Pokeball out, and a Mudkip appears. They all are in complete shock and awe. They are actually pretty impressed though, saying that this is really cool. They begin to say that it's like building a party of NPCs, and Naofumi never saw it this way, but he guesses that does kind of make sense. But with all that said and done, they all head to bed and they go back to the throne room the next day. The king meets up with them once again and shows them everybody that's there, basically saying that they will choose where they want to go in terms of choosing what hero they want to take this journey along with. But unfortunately, Naofumi gets nobody at all. They begin to think that, well, for one, he's not the shield hero, so yes, that's good, but can he even fight? It doesn't even look like he has a weapon, just like a small backpack and also some Pokeball strapped to the side of him. And the other people, the other heroes, begin to say that it is slightly unfair that nobody chose Naofumi, but they all shrug, saying that Naofumi will be just fine. They've had a conversation, and Naofumi can definitely handle himself. And Naofumi agrees, saying that he should be able to figure it out. It's not a big deal, as long as he's compensated fairly because of it. And the king says, of course, and he compensates him with 1,500 silver pieces. After that, they then head off and begin their journeys. Naofumi immediately decides that he's gonna go out into the wilderness. Maybe it's for the best to see if he can either catch some more Pokemon or monsters and or train Mudkip. So he does find these small balloon animals, throwing out Mudkip, and he begins to defeat them. Mudkip easily one-shots all of them with Tackle, and it's blatantly really simple to actually defeat these monsters, at least because they're such a low level. This basically will speedrun Mudkip's levels all the way up to level 10 relatively quickly, and this gets Naofumi up to level 5. It seems like Naofumi, when he levels up, he actually can gain special abilities, and he looks at the experience list, and his experience list is all based on XP gain for his Pokemon. At level 5, he gains more XP per Pokemon. At level 10, he gains more attack power per Pokemon. And then it keeps going so on and so forth. But level 20, it shows a little ring. And he's not sure exactly what it is, but he won't really question it. But then he slides a little bit, and it shows a ring, a bracelet, a necklace. It seems like he can either choose, or maybe he can make one of those at level 20. He's not really understanding the whole aspect because it is shaded out, but he continues on with his training. But he realizes quickly that just Mudkip does make this kind of hard. He even catches one of the little balls or the little balloons, and it actually turns into something called a Voltorb. But he decides that that probably wouldn't even be beneficial in the long run, so he decides to just pack it away. But when he packs it away in his backpack, he gets an interface, and it says that he stored it in his PC. He can actually have tons of Pokemon, but it looks like a max number of 6, but he can put the rest away into his PC. So he does just that, catching a couple monsters, but just patching them away in the PC, and he actually gains XP from this, and also gains something called more catching experience. And this catching experience allows him to actually catch Pokemon a lot easier in the long run. So any Pokemon that he feels is weak, or not on the real level of Mudkip or potential of Mudkip, he decides that he's going to just pack away for now. But after a decent amount of training, Mudkip then finally evolves. He begins to glow, moving up and down, this glowing aura surrounding him, and he turns into a Marshtomp. Now that he has a Marshtomp, his Marshtomp is actually a level of 16, making him about a level of 8. He continues to grow in level, and he'll exponentially grow more and more as he gets more and more Pokemon. It seems like that he actually can get some new items as well, in which he needs to look into. Maybe he can go to a weaponsmith, maybe he can give them a blueprint and they can somehow make the items. So he decides to do that. When night comes and a night approaches, right before, sundown, he decides to go to a weaponsmith. He meets a man by the name of Elhard, and he speaks with him briefly, asking if he can give him blueprints and he could make an item for him. He then says that there's no guarantee he'll be able to do it, but he'll definitely try, and he'll only charge Naofumi if he's successful in making the item. So he takes some blueprints out of his backpack, some blueprints that he was actually given. There's a couple of them. There's Pokeball blueprints, but also item blueprints. So there's Pokeballs, Ultra Balls, Great Balls, stuff like that. And he shows them all of them, but obviously Elhard tells him that the Pokeballs vary in how hard it is to make. Pokeball very simple, actually. He says that he can probably get a couple done in the next couple minutes. Great Ball is going to be a little bit harder, and so will Ultra Ball. And Naofumi asks how long would it take for him to do an Ultra Ball, and he says it depends on how much money he's willing to spend, because he might be able to get the Ultra Balls done maybe by tomorrow, but it would only be about 20 of them, and that would cost him a pretty penny. We're talking 300 silver at least. Naofumi gives him 350 silver and says that sounds good, and he says that he gave him 50 more than needed, and he says that it's a little tip. Frankly, he knows that this stuff is going to be pretty difficult to make, so he deserves that little bit of extra money. And Elhard says that he knows that this kid has the right mind for all of this, and he thanks him. And then he shows him some more blueprints as well. It seems like there's various items he can make, and Elhard looks at like 3 to 4 different papers full of items, and he asks which one does he want, and he says that he's interested in something called a lucky egg, in which Elhard says that's probably one of the only items he's not so sure about. These other ones, like the XP share, he might be able to construct the item, but he might not be able to actually make it work. He begins to explain that all these items are kind of weird, and he might actually need to send him to the magic shop owner to basically enhance the magic. It seems like there's even instructions on it about it. So Naofumi then nods, saying that it sounds good, and he'll leave him to it, in terms of the lucky egg, an XP share, and some other stuff like that. So Naofumi gives him all the blueprints and says he'll be back. He needs to go handle some things, and Elhard says he'll get right to work, as Naofumi leaves him some more money. He leaves and then begins to head to his hotel room, but then he's stopped by somebody, stopped by an unknown figure, and he begins to introduce himself, saying that he runs this business of some sorts. He invites Naofumi and says that asks if he wants any party members. Naofumi begins to say that he has party members, party member, and he says that of course his so-called monster mons or Pokemon or whatever, that's very, very interesting, but you could have someone that actually fights for you. Someone that can, go out there and actually fight without being in that said Pokeball. Naofumi is interested in this and walks in and follows the man, but finds that it's a slave market. He doesn't feel so good about this. He has a good relationship with his Marshtomp, and it's like he's friends with him. It's not like some slave to master type of thing. And he begins to say that he's not interested anymore, but he just pleads and asks him to look around. Eventually leading to Naofumi seeing a little girl that is crying and wants to get out, so he decides that he'll take her. And he says that, that little girl, she's not very strong, she's basically on the bridge of death, but Naofumi says that he doesn't care, he'll take her, and he'll pay whatever. And he says that it'll be cheap, 15 silver is all, and he tosses him 20 and says that he'll be taking her now. They leave without even a slave crest, and the man asks if he wants one. He says no, he doesn't need one. He takes the girl out and says that she's free to leave whenever she wants, but he is one of the heroes, and he wants to help her rehabilitate back into the world. He doesn't really understand this world entirely either, but he wants her to be safe, not trapped in a cage. This is the first time the girl by the name of Raphtalia has heard something so nice in a very long time, and she's shocked, doesn't even know if she should believe him, but he does throw out Marshtomp, and Marshtomp then hugs her, and she's shocked to see this. It's like he has little Pokemon or monsters. It's like little animals. She finds this adorable and says that it's like he has pets, and he nods, sort of, but Marshtomp is like his partner in crime. And he kind of laughs, and Marshtomp poses as well, and Raphtalia's mood is definitely lifted immediately. They head to the hotel room, and they all sleep, and Naofumi sleeps on the floor, and Marshtomp and Raphtalia sleep on the bed. After they wake up, they head out and they want to cure Raphtalia's flu, in which they pay a little bit of money for that. And then after doing so, they actually head to the magic shop owner. she introduces herself, and he explains that, well, he's heard that these items that he wants made are actually going to need some magic. And he shows her some blueprints, and she's not saying that, yeah, it's definitely going to take some magic. And she says that for a right price, she'll be able to do it pretty easily. He asks what that price is, and she says for him only like 10 silver for all of them. It's simple magic. And he nods, thanking her for it, and she looks at his belt, seeing that there's Pokeballs on it, and says, wait, you're that hero, right? 5 silver, don't worry about it. No, I won't charge you more than 10, that's ridiculous. And he nods, thanking her, as he leaves. He arrives at Elhard's weapon shop once again, and gathers all the supplies he gave him. The lucky egg, and he explains that the lucky egg is kind of just like an egg. He found an egg, and it should work pretty well. He's not exactly sure. The XP share, obviously all the mechanics are there, but it needs to be enchanted, and then all the Pokeballs. He puts them on his bag. It seems like the bag is infinite. It's kind of weird, but he then leaves, and he arrives back at the magic shop owner. When he arrives back, he shows her all the items, and she begins to enchant them all for 10 silver, or 5 silver. He gives her the 5 silver, and they head off as they say their farewells. And Naofumi actually does go back to Elhard to get Raphtalia some armor and a weapon, in which he tells Elhard not to worry because she's not going to be fighting too much, but she does seem to be excited to fight alongside of him, so he wants to give her the means of doing so. Elhard agrees, saying that it does make a strong woman if she begins training at an early young age. Naofumi then nods and heads off to the wilderness once again, in which they start training more and more throughout that day, and Raphtalia gains levels pretty quickly, especially because they have Marshtomp to help. Marshtomp is very, very good at defending Naofumi and Raphtalia, and he has some new moves as well. Some ground type moves, some pretty strong water type moves, and some various other moves as well, and he's able to defend them with relative ease. And he just easily defeats most of the people that are there, or most of the monsters that are there, frankly clearing out the forest a couple times over. Naofumi gaining a substantial amount of XP. Marshtomp does gain a good amount of XP, but obviously it's slightly dipping. Even with the lucky egg, it's slightly dipping because of the levels that are around. Marshtomp now at a level of about 23, and Naofumi getting to a level of 15. Raphtalia actually is pretty fast at leveling as well, being at a level of 8, and she just started training with them. So after that, he decides to actually head back to Elhard. Maybe they can find a new place to train, because frankly Marshtomp is growing at a really good rate, but imagine if he fought higher level Pokemon, it would be so easy. So he does just that. He heads over to Elhard, and he begins explaining that he could go to Loot Village. He's pretty strong, but he's not really strong enough to go out and do some crazy stuff. So Loot Village would be the best place for him and his party. Elhard then explains that he actually looked at some other blueprints as well. These potions, it seems. He's able to heal his Pokemon in various ways. And also, every time he puts his Pokemon back into his belt, after about 5 minutes, they'll be fully healed. And that's why his Marshtomp never seems to be hurt. And Naofumi is shocked to see this. It's like he's some personal healer. And Elhard says, yeah, but it does also seem that you can make a Pokemon healer. He explains that this healer is instant. So if he takes it around with him in his backpack, he could heal them instantly. But also, that's not very convenient because it does look like there's cooldown timers on it. Naofumi takes the blueprint and does see it, that there are cooldown timers on this healing system, and that it's best used if, well, moderately. So he decides that he needs some potions, and Elhard winks and says he was just thinking that as well. He puts out a bunch of potions and says that he went by actually the magic shop owner and actually made a ton of potions for him. Regular potions, super potions, hyper potions, and he gives them all to Naofumi, saying that they actually should work on Raphtalia as well, and any other party members he gets. It's kind of odd. It's like an actual healing potion, but better, but it's simpler. He doesn't really understand the whole physics and magic behind it, but he does say it's pretty convenient. And Naofumi asks how much that would cost, but Elhart says that it's fine. It was actually a personal project of his. He enjoyed looking at these blueprints, and he's going to continue looking at them, and he'll have Naofumi pay something later. Maybe some monthly fee or something. He doesn't really mind. Naofumi smiles and nods and says they'll be heading off to Loot Village now. So they head off to Loot Village, and when they arrive, they begin speaking with other people, seeing what they can sell, blah blah blah, all of that. Eventually learning about a nearby cave, that this nearby cave has some very valuable gems. So Naofumi decides that maybe it would be a good idea to go over there, and he's heard that there's some monsters over there too, so he can train on them with Marshtomp and also Raphtalia. And hopefully they can actually get some of these gems, and then eventually they can make some substantial amounts of money. So they head over to this said cave and begin actually mining these gems, not seeing any monsters. That's until Raphtalia sees something terrifying, a two-headed dog monster. Immediately Marshtomp is standing in front of them. Naofumi screams out for him to use Water Pulse, and then right after use Mud Shot. This slows down the opponent, or slows down the two-headed dog monster, and the Water Pulse actually confuses him as well, giving another opening for Naofumi and Raphtalia. He looks at Raphtalia to see that she is terrified, but he reminds her that it's okay, that they'll be alright, but she needs to break through this fear that she has. So immediately, she's able to stand up, grip her sword, and charge at the monster with Naofumi and Marshtomp, and they're able to defeat said monster, knocking it out. While the monster is slowly but surely dying, Naofumi decides that he's going to try and catch it, throwing a ball at it, and an ultra ball at it, and it begins to rock. 1, 2, 3. Stars begin arriving around the ball, and it seems like he just caught the monster. The two-headed dog monster not having two heads, but does turn into a dog-like Pokemon by the name of Houndour. It is said that Houndour is a dark fire type, but the thing is, it seems like it's already a pretty decently high level, being a level of 22. What Naofumi doesn't know that it would be soon to evolve, not too long from now. He basically just puts Houndour in his bag. Eventually he'll be full health, so it should be okay, and they'll be able to recover completely, and they can start their training once again. He checks in on Raphtalia, and it seems like she is a lot more comfortable in a way. She feels a lot better with what she's been dealing with, and now she can basically stand up for herself. Naofumi smiles and is glad to hear this, and now it's time for a month time skip. They go through a month of leveling up and preparations. Now, Houndour is actually a Houndoom. On top of now having a Houndoom, Naofumi actually got levels on both of his Pokemon. His Marshtomp does seem to level a lot quicker than his Houndoom. His Houndoom is only at a level of 26, but his Marshtomp is at a level of 32, being a good bit stronger than obviously his Houndoom. Naofumi himself is at a level of 21, actually unlocking the thing he was thinking about, was looking at earlier. And he finds out that it's something called a Mega Ring. He looks at it and begins to bring the blueprints to Elhart and gives it to him to have basically reconstructed and figured out. He also buys new armor for Raphtalia, who's actually at a level of 25, and then they head off to the Dragon Hourglass. They begin looking around to see what time and when the next wave will actually start. And they see that the next wave is going to begin in about 30-ish hours. And that's right when they see the other three heroes approach him. The other three heroes actually talk to Naofumi for a bit, asking how everything's been going, and he says everything's been fine, nothing too eventful. He's gotten a new Pokemon, and actually has some evolutions that are really cool, but other than that, he doesn't really have anything too special to even write home about. And he also does point out that he has Raphtalia as well, who is kind of like her, or one of his partners on top of that. Motoyasu says how does he protect her when he has to basically use Pokemon or these monsters? And he says that Raphtalia also protects herself. She's a very good swordsman. And he's so shocked to hear this. Why would a pretty lady like her have to protect herself? But Raphtalia disagrees. saying that Naofumi was the one that actually pushed her to get past her fears and past everything that she's been dealing with. And, well, Ren and Itsuki are actually pretty shocked to hear this and give Naofumi their respects, saying that that's a really good thing for a hero to do, especially, but Motoyasu doesn't really see it that way, but keeps that to himself. Eventually, Naofumi just leaves, and he goes back to Elhar to talk about what he thinks, and he says that it's going to take him some time to actually reconstruct some of this stuff. But he does need some DNA from his Mudkip / Marshtomp and also his Houndoom. It might have something to do with these gems. He might be able to make these gems, or at least a glass orb, and then the magic shop owner will use the DNA to actually create these things called Mega Stones. And Naofumi is actually shocked to hear this and nods, saying that he'll actually go give the DNA to the magic shop owner. Sounds good to me, kid. I'll bring her over the orbs or the little stones when I get the chance. Yeah, I appreciate it. It would be cool if it can be done before this next wave. Is that possible? And Elhar nods, saying that it's definitely possible. He'll try to get it done as soon as possible, even before the next wave. And Naofumi thanks him, and they head off once again, actually thinking they should go back to Loot Village, that maybe they should just set up shop there, and that they do have their own little place that they use to have a healer, a PC, and stuff like that, and they have a lot of supplies already built up over there. Naofumi stocks up on those supplies, thinking that they might need it in the long term. So, obviously, he begins to organize and do other things like that, and also begins to tell Loot Village that they're going to set up here the best they possibly can, but they do need to be ready for the wave, either evacuated or ready to fight, and have maybe certain barricades and stuff like that. And that Marshtomp can actually help. Marshtomp runs over and basically poses toward them, and basically Marshtomp begins to use his ground type moves to actually use some of the ground to make little barricades. And they're shocked to see this, and Marshtomp begins to run around creating barricades around the place. In which, after he's done, it's about that time. They actually have to get ready for this wave. It's about to occur in the next, coming 24 hours now. So they head back to the magic shop owner, and she explains that she did create these orbs. It seems like Marshtomp's DNA isn't built for it, because he's not actually at his max evolution. And Naofumi is shocked to hear this. Really? He's not? What about Houndoom? He is actually at his max evolution. He actually has a Megastone. Here you go. She hands over the Megastone and says that once Marshtomp evolves to his max evolution, bring him back. He might also have a Megastone, and it may be even stronger than Houndoom's Mega Evolution. Houndoom begins to move in his Pokeball, basically getting mad at that, but the magic shop owner kind of laughs and says that it's really no offense, that he was a starter-like Pokemon, so he probably is slightly stronger. And Houndoom kind of stops his restlessness, and he gets thrown out of the Pokeball. He puts the Megastone into, obviously, the Mega Bracelet that he has, because he decided to get a bracelet instead of a ring. And then he puts another of the stones right onto Houndoom, and this little, you could call it like a necklace of some sorts. He then walks outside and taps on the Megastone, and begins to evolve Houndoom even further. Houndoom begins to change, and now he can Mega Evolve into Mega Houndoom. But the thing is these Mega Evolutions are actually temporary. They're not forever. So there's no real reason for him to basically use this all the time. It would actually just drain the time that he can use it for. So he de-Mega Evolves Houndoom, pets him on the head, and says that once the wave starts, they'll Mega Evolve him, and then him and Marshtomp will protect Loot Village and do the best they possibly can. They all nod, and then they begin to get ready, or, begin to wait for the next wave. The wave then begins. Tons of these hornet-like monsters, skeletons, zombie-like monsters start coming out. So he throws both of his Pokeballs out, Mega Evolves Houndoom, and they begin to basically destroy these monsters. Houndoom is extremely strong, especially in terms of base stats, because of this Mega Evolution. Marshtomp is a higher level, maybe not as high base stats, but I will say, a Marshtomp at a level of about 32, 33 now, is very, very strong. So the wave monsters are kind of defeated in a wash. Naofumi and his party just easily eliminate them and gain substantial amounts of XP, leading to Marshtomp even evolving. Now his starter is fully evolved into a Swampert. Now having a Swampert, he can actually use the Mega Stone on him, but with the wave coming to a close, he decides to hold off on that. He runs off once again, and he actually heads to the main boss of the wave. And when he arrives, he sees that the Chimera is about to be defeated by the other heroes. So he decides maybe it would be a good idea for him to throw a Pokeball, or more like an Ultra Ball at it. So he decides to do just that. He throws the Ultra Ball, and the other heroes look at him like he's insane. What the hell did he just do? Well, what's even happening? He says that he can catch the monster, and that it will definitely benefit his party as well. They say that's kind of unfair, that they should get it, and he just shrugs his shoulders, saying that they can't even use his weapons. Watch, check it out. He throws a Pokeball at one of them, they catch it, but then they start getting electrocuted, throwing the Pokeball back at Naofumi. Naofumi basically tells them again that he has his own special thing. He watches as the ball continues to rock, and then sparks fly once again, and it's now captured. And that capture turns into something legendary. Something extremely legendary. And that is a Pokemon by the name of Entei. Now Fumi's confused. It's weird because it doesn't necessarily look like an Entei, but it does have the similar features the Chimera does, at least, excluding like the wings and stuff. But Naofumi does kind of understand why it would turn into that, but now that he has it captured, Entei is part of his team. The wave is now finished, and Naofumi's team is now Swampert, Houndoom, and Entei. He looks to see what Entei's level is, and it's actually bridging the gap of level 50. That is a lot stronger than he actually has on his team. His highest is actually 36 currently. So having a level 50 on his team definitely puts him at a good advantage. On top of this, Entei has some really good moves, including some high-powered fire-type moves, some decent dark-type moves, and also a priority extreme speed move that could even help with travel. But with all that said, the wave is over. He meets up with Raphtalia and the rest of his party, obviously, and he begins to basically speak about what they should be doing until they're invited, by the castle, to a hero's state dinner, in which Naofumi decides to basically go, and he actually lets out all his Pokemon to basically just roam around and have a good time. He tells them all to be on their best behavior, and of course they listen, even the Entei. Entei is extremely powerful, but he does respect Naofumi now that he is kind of his master in a way. But this night would go extremely wrong, extremely fast. And a woman by the name of Mine informs Motoyasu that Raphtalia was basically bought from a slave market, and that the other three people, or the other three monsters in his party, are basically slaves. And immediately Motoyasu, hearing this, walks over to Naofumi and challenges him to a duel, in which he immediately retracts his Pokemon and puts him on his belt, and says that sounds ridiculous. Why would he duel him? And he says that Raphtalia is a slave, but Raphtalia says she's not. There's no slave crest on her, and, well, it doesn't make sense for her to be a slave. She would have been gone already if she was quote-unquote a slave. What's stopping her from leaving? And he says that it has to be some mind control that maybe one of his monsters have, or maybe his monsters are threatening her, and she just shakes her head. That's just not, and tells him that that's just not true. And Raphtalia says that they should just leave, but immediately one of the guards grabs her and begins to muzzle her. Naofumi throws out his Entei, throws out his Swampert, and throws out his Houndoom, Mega Evolving his Swampert, and immediately Houndoom is growling at everybody. You guys better let her go. Trust me, I'm protective of her. Imagine how they feel. They begin to basically growl and snarl at everybody there, and they basically let Raphtalia go, and Entei basically picks her up on his back and jumps through the window and leaves. Swampert picks up Naofumi and they jump out, and Houndoom begins to just blast fire at them as they leave as well. They can also sense the hostility. They're not gonna basically take any chances, especially with them. Immediately they head off to, well, Loot Village. They head off there to basically get ready to leave. They're not going to deal with these people. For some reason they want to turn on them. But just as they're about to leave, and just as they're hooking up some, well, cart onto Entei, Motoyasu and Mine appear with a bunch of noble or knights to basically say that Motoyasu rules this land now. Naofumi isn't having it, saying that that just sounds ridiculous. They're not going to employ their own taxes and take it out on Loot Village, and he says that if he wants to fight, that they can fight. But they're going to try to say that a duel is between 1 versus 1, but that's not the case. Naofumi has a party for a reason, and he tells Motoyasu that he can have his whole party fight for him too, if that makes him feel more comfortable, and he won't even have Raphtalia fight. He'll just have his Pokemon fight. And Motoyasu scoffs at this, saying that they won't do a fight because he's obviously chicken, even though Naofumi kind of just said that he would. But Naofumi says that, alright, then what do you want to do? We'll do a race, 3 laps around this area. Entei looks at Naofumi and nods. Oh well, I guess you have a deal. He hops on Entei, and their race begins not too long after that. And let's just say, this isn't even close. Using extreme speed, Entei sprints past every magical thing they can use. On top of that, they try to use magic to slow him down, and it only halves his speed, but extreme speed still is priority. So it still is extremely fast, and he's able to win with ease, telling them to leave right now or else, and Entei begins to growl, and the other 2 Pokemon that he has, Swampert and Houndoom, come out of their Pokeballs. Motoyasu and Mine argue about this, but one of the Queen's Shadows show up and basically gives her a note telling her to leave. And she is forced to leave, and they say that this isn't over, and they head off. Loot Village thanks Naofumi profusely, and even thanks his Pokemon, and he says that it's truly no problem, that it was ridiculous anyways, the idea that they were able to do such a thing. But with that said, Naofumi says that he has to leave, and that they'll be in contact, that he'll check in on them every so often to see if they're okay. They thank him, and he heads off with his party, basically looking for some new villages. And during this trip though, he actually does come across a wealthy trader. This wealthy trader begins to basically explain to him that he needs a ride to a nearby village, and of course Naofumi is going to do that for him. He takes him in the cart, and they begin to head off once again. That's until a bunch of group of bandits begin to attack them, in which Naofumi and his party, including Raphtalia obviously, are able to defend against them with relative ease, and they begin to say that they're going to make sure that Naofumi's name gets thrown through the mud, and that basically he either lets them go or else. Naofumi kind of nods at this, and says that they can just bury them underground. How about it, Swampert? He looks at Swampert, and Swampert basically makes a giant hole and throws them in it, and they begin to beg for mercy, saying that they promise they won't say a word, they won't do anything. Naofumi shrugs and says, well, he can't trust them. They keep burying him underneath, and they begin to say that they'll give Naofumi everything. And then Naofumi eventually lets them go, and basically tells them that if they even say a word, that they'll be buried under the ground. So they head out, and Raphtalia begins to question if he was actually going to do that, and Naofumi shakes his head. I had no intention of doing that. I'm not going to kill them by burying them, that sounds horrible. But Naofumi then just leaves with the trader, getting him to the area that, well, he needed to go. The trader then says, as a thanks to Naofumi, that he's going to teach him new skills, introduce him to new contacts, and anything he really needs. So this will actually turn out to be extremely beneficial to Naofumi. And after some exploring and some time out, he actually does find something, this abandoned alchemist tomb. It's housing a cursed seed, and it seems like this so-called cursed seed is actually missing. But just as he wants to do more investigation, he actually gets a message from the trader, learning that there is a task for him to go do, which is to deliver some herbicide to a village. Naofumi and his party discover though, when they arrive at that village, it's overrun by monstrous plants. Luckily, this is going to be relatively easy for Houndoom and Entei, especially to just kill the regular plants. It's, one flamethrower and it's basically over for those plants. And in terms of the trees and lighting things on fire, Swampert can handle that with his water. So it'd be pretty easy, you could say, to get around that. They easily fend off the monstrous plants as they go into the village, and they speak with the people there. They explain that Motoyasu came with this seed, it seems, to end their local famine, but it sprouted and just started making a complete ruckus, monsters attacking them and everything. And Naofumi says that he can handle it. He should be able to handle it with a herbicide and maybe some other methods as well. So they head over to where the main monstrous plant is, in which Swampert begins to trap it in like basically the ground, making it stuck, and then they begin to breathe fire on it, Entei and Houndoom. Raphtalia also helps with her sword, cutting through any other monsters that are trying to attack them, and Naofumi, using the herbicide and the water of Swampert, he basically injects it all with the herbicide. After the monster begins to slowly but surely shrink, he throws an Ultra Ball at it, and it begins to rock more, once, twice, 3 times, and then it sparks up, and he just caught a new Pokemon. And for some reason, the monstrous plant just turned into a grass type. He's not sure if this is just random, but he does find it kind of interesting. And that grass type is Chespin. Now adding a brand new grass type to his team. He heads back up to the village and explains everything that happened, and says that he has really no way of getting them more food or anything like that, but Chespin actually disagrees. Chespin begins to basically spew out seeds, and basically just begins to say his name over and over again. And Naofumi pats him on the head, saying that he did a good job, and they all are basically grateful for this little monster. They're not sure what it is, but they are grateful. Now with that being done, they all head off once again, and the trader actually gives him something else, merchandise to actually deliver to a nearby hot springs. They take it to the hot springs, and they actually decide to stay the night over that hot springs, and he lets everybody out of their Pokeballs. They all take a nice rest and just get some, nice downtime for once. After that actually passes though, they do learn of something very mysterious, a disease that is spreading through a village, but why is it spreading through that village? They head over to check it out, and they see everybody extremely sick. Naofumi actually has a means of healing a lot of them, using this antidote spray on everybody, and it cures them right up. It seems like it's perfect. It just cures all diseases. He's not exactly sure, but at least the antidote worked. Maybe if he had some full heals, it would fully restore anything in terms of any sickness and such. But for that, it's just basically air poisoning, so the antidote worked perfectly. He then tells them that he'll figure out what's going on, and they actually do say that they know what is going on. The sword hero Ren killed a dragon nearby, but left the body to rot, and it's decomposing above them, and it's basically just spreading this horrible air throughout their village. And now Naofumi nods, saying he'll go and handle that right now. He heads up with his team and his party, and they approach this dragon. He's basically about to tell Swampert to encase the dragon and they'll take it down, but just as he's about to say this, the dragon comes back to life. A zombie-like dragon is now about to fight them. He throws out all of his Pokemon. He's not going to deal with this one-on-one by any means, but he does tell Chespin to run away. He's not really that strong. Chespin is like level 7 at this point, and he doesn't want him to get hurt. He Mega Evolves his Swampert, especially because, his Swampert's going to be good against a dragon, he assumes. At least, any flames that he shoots at him, and the Swampert begins to attack the dragon. And substantial damage is created, and even Entei begins to charge at it, bite it, and use various moves that he obviously has. Extrasensory, Lava Plume, things like that would hurt it. And then also the Houndoom actually helps as well, hitting it with as much as possible, striking it down, and it seems like the dragon is slowly but surely getting hurt more and more. That's until, Naofumi decides that he's going to throw an Ultra Ball at the dragon. With the dragon basically detained for now, he throws a Pokeball. This will help in terms of getting rid of the body, so maybe he can actually have it. He eventually catches the dragon after it rocks 3 times, and he picks it up to see what the Pokemon is. And he sees that the Pokemon is actually holding a Mega Stone already, and that Pokemon is Salamence. Not only did Naofumi just acquire a level 55 Salamence, he also dealt with the dragon problem for the village. He heads back down with his new Pokemon and basically explains to them that he handled the entirety of what happened, and they thank him. They thank him so much and ask how he was able to handle it, and he said that he had to, well, kind of defeat a zombie dragon and then catch it into this Pokeball. And they are shocked to hear this, but just say that he did a good job and then they just thank him. But with all that done, he's kind of done with everything in terms of the village. His level currently is upwards of level 30 and bridging level 40. And once he gets to level 40, he actually unlocks a brand new item. So he wants to definitely check that out on top of it. But Raphtalia is actually about to be level 40 as well, meaning that she'll need a class upgrade. So they head off and they begin heading toward the capital once again. But before they arrive, Chespin actually gets away out of his Pokeball and runs toward this small girl. And Chespin begins playing with the girl, and Naofumi walks over and she explains that her name is Melty, that she's actually kind of lost, and she asks them to basically accompany her to the capital, in which they say that's completely fine, and Chespin definitely seems to have taken a liking to her. Chespin jumps on her shoulder and begins jumping around as well. So they then decide to take her to the capital with them, in which when they arrive, Naofumi begins to look for the Dragon Hourglass once again so that they can see if they can get Raphtalia's class upgrade. But before that could happen, someone comes out of nowhere and tries to stab him with a spear, and Naofumi doesn't have a means to dodge. But luckily, Swampert immediately comes out and grabs the spear, slamming the person to the ground. Swampert being a decently high level now, we're talking throughout the entire adventures, like Houndoom is probably at a level 40, Swampert level 45, Entei closer to Salamance's level at around 55, and Salamence who's obviously at level 55. Swampert is able to protect Naofumi as Naofumi gets ready to Mega Evolve the Swamperts, but he stops because someone approaches with royal guards next to her. It's Melty? Melty begins to explain that she personally is the heir apparent to the throne, and that she is the second princess, and that Melty, the one that is antagonizing all of this and making all of this occur, well, she is supposed to be the next princess in line, but she has such a toxic personality that the queen didn't see her fit. She then tells her little sister to basically scram, but Melty disagrees, saying that if she did, that all this would just occur right in front of her, that this is not very princess-like by her sister. Her sister is frustrated to hear this, but Melty forces them all to stop, and she basically tells Naofumi to follow her. They head over to the Dragon Hourglass to get Raphtalia her class upgrade, but it seems like even with Melty there, the church refuses to let him in and actually let him upgrade his class, in which Melty gets frustrated by this and wonders why they're acting in such a way. But he says, or begins to ask, if there's any other places with Dragon Hourglasses, in which she says that there is. She says that there's one at Shield Frieden. So he throws out Salamence and asks for basically the location. She explains where it is, and he says that he'll go with Raphtalia and Salamence and head over there basically right now. But before he goes, he should go check in with Elhard. When he checks in, he actually has some new items for him. Some new items that will actually boost his Pokemon, luckily, and then also he upgraded some other stuff as well, giving him something called a full restore and some other nice items. Naofumi thanks him and says that he's been really helpful, giving him basically most of the money Naofumi has, and Elhard takes half of it and gives it back, saying that it's truly a pleasure working with him. He doesn't need to overpay him that much. Naofumi nods and thanks him, and they head off to Shield Frieden. Before even the wave would begin, in which they actually just use Salamence to fly all the way over there, and they Mega Evolve Salamence, and he goes extremely fast through the air, flying all the way to Shield Frieden, And when they arrive, they're actually greeted by some noblemen asking who he is, and he explains that he's one of the heroes. And that's when he learns that all the other countries, well, they are going through this as well. The waves and all of that, and all such of that. And he is so baffled by this, he was never told, and he apologizes, saying that he wishes he could help, and he's going to help. So this wave is actually going to be fought at Shield Frieden, but he needs to be able to tell Loot Village of that as well, and maybe he'll leave a Pokemon there to help. He looks around and decides to maybe he'll go into his PC. Maybe he can leave a Pokemon there to basically watch guard. So he looks through his PC and he finds that Voltorb he got in the very beginning, thinking that maybe if he trained him up in the next little bit, well, he can leave him at Loot Village permanently and have basically its own little mascot and its own little protector. So he decides that he's going to get Raphtalia's class upgrade. He does just that, in which she chooses her own little upgrade, and then he's going to fly back and train, and obviously train his Voltorb to a decently high level and leave it at Loot Village to help the other warriors that are going to be there to protect it. So he does just that. In the next 48 hours or so-ish, he flies around doing a lot of things, and then leaving his newly evolved Electrode at Loot Village. He apologizes that he hasn't been able to be around very much, but he explains that now he has a very important job, and that is to protect this village. The Voltorb, or the Electrode, is extremely excited to do this, and everybody actually runs around and pets the Electrode, excited to have its protector. He then heads off once again to just scout out more and more villages, eventually finding somewhere that there's basically these people, these refugees that are starving. He then lands and begins asking them what's going on, and they begin begging him for food. Luckily, they have a way of getting food, and obviously he has food as well. So he plants a bunch of seeds and then also feeds them whatever he can find. And they are grateful to hear this, but he asks what even happened, why are they even in this position? And they explain that, well, they were basically in this horrible place not too long ago, and, well, you could say Itsuki helped them and saved them, made a revolution, but unfortunately it just put another corrupt government in, and how they all fled from this revolution, and it's just horrible. So Naofumi, actually kind of frustrated, wants to find both Ren and Itsuki. He wants to talk to Ren about the whole dragon incident, and obviously talk to Itsuki about this so-called revolution that he messed up. And eventually he does find them, but immediately they accuse him of stealing their money, but he begins to explain to them that he didn't steal their money, that they didn't even do their jobs, that Ren obviously just left the dragon there, that it was decomposing and causing sickness, illness. And Paul Itsuki started a revolution and only put a new government just as corrupt as the old one. And they all basically just made the situations even worse. Ren and Itsuki are shocked to hear this and realize that this world is slightly different than what they expected. Itsuki questions a little bit more, but eventually they cave in, thinking that Naofumi wouldn't be lying. What's the point of lying in this situation anyways? With 24 hours left before this next wave, Naofumi wants to level up his Chespin. That is his goal here. He wants to level it up as much as possible, so he begins to just throw out his Swampert or his Houndoom and has Chespin run around with it as Chespin hits a monster, and then his Swampert or Houndoom will finish it off. And this happens for the next 12 hours-ish, and then he's going to take a break to basically get some rest before this next wave. So he handles all of that, getting his Chespin to a Quilladin, and then eventually a Chestnut. With little time left, his party then hops back in their Pokeballs, he hops on Salamence, and so does Raphtalia, and they begin flying away, in which one of the heroes sees them. Ren sees them and asks what is he doing, that the wave starts in 4 hours, but he explains that this is not the only place that is affected by waves, and actually all the countries are. So he's going to go to a nearby country he knows, and he's going to go protect them, and then after he defeats the boss over there, he'll come back over here to check up on them. So he flies off, and when he arrives, he just arrives in the nick of time to actually fight the boss at Shield Frieden. The main boss then arrives for the wave, and it's something pretty simple. It's nothing too crazy, it's actually just another thing very similar to the dragon he fought before, and it's actually kind of easy to defeat it. It's this ghost-like dragon in which he just flies around on Salamence and uses his Entei, his Houndoom, and his Swampert for long-range attacks, and he has his Chestnut on the Salamence, so when the dragon tries to attack, he uses Spiky Shield to block the attack, and it actually hurts the dragon as well, defeating the dragon with relative ease, and, well, killing it, not really having a chance to actually capture it, unluckily enough. But with the wave disappearing, he flies back to Melremark, and everybody thanks him as he's flying away. He arrives at Melremark, and, well, it seems like the wave is still going on. It's still pushing really strong. He goes over to see where the main boss is, finding that they're just basically arguing, bickering, yelling at each other about that, oh no, this is how you beat the boss, no, this is how you beat the boss. They're not even thinking for themselves or thinking for each other, trying to combine ideas. Naofumi yells at them really quick and tells them to stop messing around. Raphtalia immediately charges in toward the Dutchman, stabbing at its shadow, revealing the true boss of the wave. Or that's what they think, at least. A Soul Eater appears and begins fighting them, in which Naofumi is able to actually knock out the Soul Eater, more or less put it into a position where it's going to basically die, but he decides to throw a Pokeball at it, capturing a brand new Pokemon. But as he's capturing this said Pokemon, another Soul Eater arrives. He's about to fight it as well, but someone else kills it. He looks around to the other heroes, but they're not even moving. They haven't even made a move. Someone else has just arrived. Someone that is actually the true boss of the wave. And this is Glass, a woman in a black kimono wielding a twin-bladed Warfans, or actually two twin-bladed Warfans. The true enemy of the wave is actually here and now. He basically stands his ground as his Pokeball captures the Soul Eater, turning that Soul Eater into a Gengar. Glass looks at Naofumi and is kind of impressed, thinking that maybe he is extremely strong. Looking at the other three and immediately blasts them away, and they're basically out of commission almost instantaneously. She nods. Yeah, I thought so. They don't seem very strong. Are they really heroes? Legendary heroes. What a joke. Especially with them. You, on the other hand, I've never heard of you. You use these little monsters. Very interesting. Naofumi then says that he is the legendary Pokemon trainer. That it might seem outlandish, but these little monsters, other known as Pokemon, are very strong. She then smirks, saying that she hopes that he is as strong as them, and he says not to underestimate his entire party. She then begins to try and blast them, but the Chestnut that he has. Chestnut steps in front, using Spiky Shield, easily negating the damage, and she smirks. Wow, now it looks like all your Pokemon, you say, are in unison. So let's see how strong all of them actually are. All of his Pokemon, all 6, including Raphtalia, stand in front of him. His Gengar comes out of the Pokeball, and they begin to stare daggers into Glass as Glass gets ready to fight. It's as if she is a Pokemon herself, and now it's going to be basically a 8 versus 1 if you include Raphtalia. How will this fight go? Will him and his Pokemon and Raphtalia be enough to defeat Glass? Do they have enough up their sleeve to defeat her in this type of duel? She just wiped the floor with the other 3 heroes. Can Naofumi even live up to that same expectation, that same power? Well, you'll have to find out on the next part. Standing in front of Naofumi, he has to make a choice. A choice to stand his ground and protect everybody that is behind him, even those who have been annoying him. Even the other 3 heroes that have seemingly given him more and more issues. But nonetheless, Naofumi decides to stand his ground. Can he match up with Glass? Will he be able to keep up with her with the Pokemon in his party? Well, let's find out right now on the finale of What If Naofumi was the legendary Pokemon trainer. Yo, what is good, everybody? It's your boy Golden Falls Golden What If, whatever you want to call me, and I'm back. I'm back with the finale of What If Naofumi was the legendary Pokemon trainer. I'm not going to waste any more of your time. I hope y'all have enjoyed this series, and yeah, that's about it. Make sure to leave a like, sub, comment down below, all that good stuff, and I'm not going to waste any more of your time, and let's just get right into the What If. Let's get it. Naofumi and his party stand strong, and he calls to his Chestnut to get right in front of him. Glass says that that's pathetic, that he can't fight his own battles, but Naofumi kinda looks past his Chestnut and shrugs, saying that this is how he fights his battles. His Swampert goes forward immediately, and the ground around them begins to shake. Ripples begin to crack below Glass, and she falls through the ship. All his Pokemon, including his Chestnut picking Naofumi up with Raphtalia, jump down toward Glass. The Chestnut is there to protect Naofumi, because frankly, if he falls, then the rest of them will fall as well. Being that his Pokemon will have to fight on their own, they won't get the most beneficial part of Naofumi's, you could say, kit. Being able to inform his Pokemon what moves to use in certain situations has definitely benefited them especially. And now that he's a higher level, he actually does get benefits from doing this. But this is when Naofumi is going to start pulling out all the stops. Pulling out something that he wasn't sure he would be able to do, but at the level he's at, well, he might be able to just do it. He Mega Evolves his Swampert, and then turns and begins Mega Evolving his Salamence. Both of them now in a Mega state. He goes to Mega Evolve a third, but an error comes up on his screen and says that he can only Mega Evolve 2 at this point. Naofumi is frustrated, thinking that maybe if he was stronger he could Mega Evolve all of them, or at least the ones that have Mega Evolutions available. But without another thought, Glass goes sending blasts at Naofumi, trying to cut through his defenses. But Chestnut stands in front, using his spiky shield, blocking every single attack that comes his way. Chestnut is frankly one of the only reasons why Naofumi is currently alive, but it is definitely beneficial to have a bulky Pokemon like him stand his ground and block the attacks. While Swampert, Entei, Houndoom, Gengar, and Salamence begin to unleash basically hellfire upon Glass. She's able to deflect a lot of it away until she gets hit by a Shadow Ball from Gengar. This takes substantial amounts of damage for Glass, and Naofumi gets an idea. An idea that his Gengar, well, he has something very interesting. Something called Hypnosis. It's not a guarantee that will hit, but with some time and multiple uses, he should be able to hit it. So he decides that he's going to do something drastic, throwing this weird lens toward Gengar. Gengar puts it on, and this is going to make it so Hypnosis will have a more likelihood of hitting. With everybody, all his Pokemon in front of him, excluding Chestnut of course, Chestnut is right by Naofumi's side, Gengar gets an opening and uses Hypnosis, but misses just barely. Glass dodges out of the way, but immediately Swampert enters into another Earthquake, making it so Glass gets stuck in the ground. Fire begins to get basically blasted at her from Entei, and Houndoom and Salamence comes through as well, using Fly, landing straight on top of her, burying her deeper into the ground. She begins to struggle trying to get out and is about to blast her way out until Gengar is right in front of her, using Hypnosis once again, putting her to sleep. When she falls asleep, Gengar begins to use Dream Eater. This Dream Eater begins to suck the energy and all the HP points out of Glass. It seems like Gengar isn't outputting as much damage now compared to Shadow Ball, but this is a good way to drain Glass. Unfortunately, she wakes up relatively quickly, breaking free, but when she backs up from the other Pokemon that are around her, she feels extremely weak. It seems like Naofumi has drained her of all her strength, and this is going to force her to leave. Before she can leave though, Raphtalia is behind her and takes a nice slice at her with her light-like blade, and when she lands that blow, Glass is substantially hurt, almost on the bridge of death, but she's able to slip away with the wave just in time. Naofumi sighs and says that he's glad that they have gotten stronger, but they'll have to get even stronger when Glass comes back, because there's no guarantee that she'll come back at the same strength. The rest of his Pokemon, and even Gengar, who he just captured, all agree and are excited at the aspect of training up even more. Raphtalia agrees and feels the same, that they're going to need to get stronger, especially with opponents like Glass around. But immediately after this, the other three heroes begin to question Naofumi. How did he get so strong? This makes no sense. He seems like he's cheating. But Naofumi shakes his head, saying that he's not doing any of the sorts. After the wave though, he's immediately sent somewhere else, or at least back to the kingdom, to speak with the king. The king begins to get mad at him, for some odd reason, saying that he needs to tell them all his secrets. But Naofumi says there is no secrets. He actually just is doing what his hero details are basically telling him to do. He got 6 Pokemon, he trained them up, he used various items, that's all he's doing, and of course he can help the other heroes out, but he means that there's no really way around that he can't do anything. But the king is still pissed, thinking that he's lying, and saying that he better tell the truth or else that he'll actually go out of his way to hurt Raphtalia. And immediately when this is heard, Naofumi doesn't even throw out his Pokeballs, but all his Pokemon come out of those Pokeballs and begin inching toward the king. And he begins to freak out, saying to call them off, but Naofumi says that he won't be doing such a thing. If they see fit to kill him, well then they see fit to kill him. He just threatened one of his party members, and he wouldn't do any of the sort to save him. His Gengar jumps in front and uses hypnosis on the king, putting him to sleep. He begins to basically cause dreams, nightmares within the king's mind of basically anything else, of anything he can find in the deepest doubts of his mind, seeing something odd. The Gengar sees the church betraying the king, and that is part of one of his deepest nightmares. The church turning on them, betraying the king and taking over the kingdom. Gengar sees this and he's able to translate this to Naofumi over some time. Obviously it's not flawless, but he's able to explain it to Naofumi, and Naofumi understands that the king must be terrified of this. So he basically retracts all his Pokemon except for Salamence, telling him to just break out the window, that it doesn't really matter to him, he'll take the stairs. He walks down the stairs and a shadow appears giving him the Three Heroes Church emblem. Naofumi had a feeling that this church of some sorts must be a problem, but when will this problem really appear? He's not so sure, but he can't go out of his way to do much about it, at least not at the moment. So Naofumi decides that he's going to head off. He's going to head off and actually head to Shield Freedom. With Raphtalia increasing her level at such a rapid rate, she'll probably need a class upgrade pretty soon, but he'll wait on that. He wants to figure out if they can find any information at Shield Freedom or maybe even at other places. So he heads off towards Shield Freedom, but before he's actually able to fully leave, and obviously with Raphtalia, he sees Melty below them. He flies back down and asks what she wants, and she begins to explain that they need to reconcile with the king, but Naofumi says that that just can't happen. He's done too much and he's acting like a foul person. Plus Naofumi has some information about the Three Heroes Church that he needs to relay to other countries, and maybe they can figure out a way to handle it. But Melty says that they should talk to her mother, that maybe she'll know what to do. And Naofumi nods, saying that they can head over right now. But as he sees this, well, Melty is about to get stabbed in the back. One of his Pokemon immediately jump out. It's Chestnut. Chestnut, the one that basically has bonded with Melty, or at least Chespin did, and puts a shield in front of Melty, blocking it, entangling all of them into basically one area and knocking them all out by slamming them on the ground. Chestnut picks up Melty and brings her to Salamence, putting her on the dragon as he goes back into his Pokeball. Naofumi looks at the guards and thinks that was not the best idea, that Melty must be basically people might be trying to assassinate Melty. More specifically, maybe her sister. And Melty, hearing this, is shocked. No way, there's no way that her sister would try to kill her. But Naofumi shakes his head, saying to not be so coy. You can't be an idiot in a situation like this. Naofumi says they'll go to the queen right now, especially because that will be the safest place for Melty. They fly off, and when they reach the queen, they're in a different country. But they're obviously let in, and they know who Naofumi is and has heard of this person that flies around on a dragon. He arrives and begins speaking with the queen and says that Melty is definitely in danger and needs to be protected. And she explains that Naofumi would be the best person to do so. And Naofumi agrees to this, but the only thing is they need to somehow deal with the Church of the Three Heroes. The queen says that she's going to handle that actually. She has some guards and some of the kingdom's people getting ready to have a siege on them, but Naofumi says that he feels like that won't be the best idea, and it might not work out the way she thinks. So he's going to actually give a notice to one of the other heroes, not Motoyasu, but probably to Ren. So when he leaves, he decides to actually take Melty, and they fly off to find Ren. When they find Ren, he's actually with Itsuki and Motoyasu, in which they're searching for Melty. He flies down and lands and throws something to Ren, telling him that, well, you could say that the Three Heroes Church is in some bad cahoots. And he explains that he's going to be taking Melty and that the people that basically were with Melty tried to kill her. He flies off again, and Ren, hearing this, is kind of shocked, seeing that Motoyasu is about to shoot something at them, or at least to take them down, but he stops him, saying that Melty is not there by force and that someone tried to kill her. He looks over to Mine, but doesn't even say a word, and brings Itsuki somewhere else, and they begin speaking about this whole Three Heroes Church situation. During this time, Salamence begins to get slightly tired. Frankly, it's been a lot of flying, and more flying, so they actually land at a nearby area on the border of what basically where Siltvale is. But it's obviously closed by royal decree, but he decides that he's going to visit this house. It seems like there's a nobleman by the name of Richnot who rules the area, and they all actually head in to basically take a load off, just eat some food and relax for the night. But Naofumi didn't know that doing this would cause a lot more trouble. Melty and Richnot get taken away, and they decide to hide Naofumi instead of letting him handle the situation and fight them off. Richnot is arrested, and the maids obviously hide Naofumi, Raphtalia, and they don't need to hide the Pokemon because they're in their Pokeballs. But after this set is done, Naofumi decides that he's going to go after them right now. He hops on Salamence with Raphtalia, and they go flying off. And when they arrive, they see tons of demi-humans at the gate, basically about to bust through and telling them to let go of Richnot. Raphtalia, on the other hand, begins to recognize the area, and it begins to give her minor flashbacks. But even with that said, Naofumi and Raphtalia are able to lay siege into the castle or into the kingdom, and when they arrive, they see Richnot getting tortured. Raphtalia immediately is in front of Rabier and has a sword to his neck and begins beating on him. Naofumi doesn't even say a word, but he just frees Richnot and makes sure Melty is safe, in which Chestnut, immediately hops out of his Pokeball and picks up Melty and begins running out of the area, because they have this bond. And he's honestly, Naofumi's questioning if he should even have Chestnut with him, and maybe he should just leave him with Melty, but he does need the power of Chestnut, or how strong he is. But with that said, they're able to leave pretty scotch-free, and Raphtalia decides that she doesn't actually want to kill Rabier. but when he stands up, he actually falls out a window. When he does such a thing, he is presumed to be dead, but he's actually not dead. While Raphtalia and the rest of them actually find someone else by the name of Keel and helps out any of the other slaves that are underneath the area, it seems like Rabier is getting up and is still alive. Rabier releases this seal, the sealed away Tyrannosaurus Rex-like dragon monster, which promptly kills him and heads for Naofumi. They hop on Salamence, and he begins speaking with his Pokemon about the chances of them beating this thing. But he decides to bring him to an ocean, or more like a giant lake. They begin to stand their ground and bait the Tyrannosaurus-like Rex into the water. Once it goes into the water, the Swampert begins to use Earthquake. Once it starts using Earthquake, it creates a semi-whirlpool. Once this occurs, the rest of his Pokemon begin to use move after move, especially his Chestnut. Encapsulating it using Leaf Bombs, it begins to actually do super effective like damage because of the water that is surrounding it. The Leaf Bombs are actually growing in strength. On top of this, the rest of his Pokemon are just unleashing any attacks they can, including his Salamence. Using Dragon Claw over and over is at a very beneficial rate because it's actually doing super effective damage as well. Doing all this damage at once, they're able to fell the monster. It falls into the water, but it begins to dissolve into said water, and someone else begins to appear. It seems to be a woman. A young woman? He's not so sure, but she introduces herself as Victoria, the Fallolial Queen. She invites them in and basically brings them all to the Fallolial Sanctuary, in which they talk. Obviously, the rest of his Pokemon have fun playing with the other Fallolials as Victoria speaks with Naofumi. She begins to explain that without the other heroes and without the coordination proper, the waves are going to get increasingly more difficult, and that these other countries do need a lot of help. In which Naofumi says that he has been helping them, obviously not as much as he should be, but he's going to be working on that very soon. He can actually get Pokemon set up at every place. She agrees that this is a really, really good idea, but the idea that Pokemon alone would be able to stop the waves, at least in different areas, is a bit outlandish, that he would be overstretching himself in terms of training all of these said Pokemon. In which Naofumi knows. He agrees to that as well and says that it is going to be hard, but he can try his best. But she says that the main thing is actually getting all these other heroes to cooperate. Because if they all get on the level and the skill of Naofumi, Naofumi will be able to protect one country with Pokemon scattered throughout other countries, and then the other heroes will be in those said other countries, and everything will be at peace. Everything will seem simpler, but with the arrival of another woman or glass from the waves, it is pretty obvious that the other heroes are far from ready. And he asks what he should do, and she begins to explain that they need to reconcile with the heroes, in which Naofumi agrees. He said he'll do his best, and she smiles, thanking him for the cooperation, and they actually just stay the night. After the night is over though, Victoria says that it's not like she can really make any of them her future successors, and frankly, she doesn't really see fit to do that to Pokemon that have such evolutions like Mega Evolution, but she can enhance Naofumi, unlocking some skills that Naofumi didn't even know existed, and frankly, this is going to be slightly beneficial, nothing crazy, but beneficial for now, giving all his Pokemon a slight stat boost, kind of like if it gave all the Pokemon like Pokerus or of some sorts. But with that said, Naofumi is then transported to the nearest hero. But that said nearest hero is the one that's going to be the most difficult to actually speak to, and that is Motoyasu. And just as he begins to speak with Motoyasu, he begins to basically turn on Naofumi, trying to basically start a fight. Naofumi says this is a horrible idea, that they shouldn't be doing this, but that fight then ensues. But Naofumi is outclassing his entire party by a lot. Frankly, his 6 Pokemon will overwhelm them like it's nothing, including Raphtalia. Raphtalia is extremely strong from the support that she's able to give to the rest of his party, and they're on the ground in a matter of seconds. But this peace, quote unquote, and this talking will end very soon as a blast begins to rain down onto Naofumi. He looks up and tells his Chestnut to use Spiky Shield, and anybody else that knows Protect use it as well. They all begin to either protect and Chestnut uses Spiky Shield, and they're able to block the giant blast. Just as Naofumi thought, a problem with the church arises. It seems like the Queen wasn't able to handle it quick enough, and now they're facing down the Pope with one of the legendary, or the combination of a relic that is the legendary weapons all combined. He begins to strike at Naofumi and Motoyasu, but with the help of his Pokemon, they are easily able to block, actually finding insane success during this. And it's basically a pretty decent battle, but let's just say Naofumi and his party were very prepared for a high altitude battle like this. With all the party members that Naofumi has, and all the unique skill sets, basically Chestnut being able to protect everybody, Salamence being able to fly in and out at insane speeds, and also Gengar using Hypnosis and various other mischievous attacks, like even Shadow Sneak, and then Swampert using Earthquake to change the terrain, and also various other moves that can come from his Entei and also his Houndoom. This makes this battle relatively simple. But that comes to a halt when a cathedral begins to appear around them, but just in the nick of time, Ren and Itsuki are actually able to cancel this out. The Pope is so worried about Naofumi that he doesn't realize the 2 people that he thought he killed. They begin to strike the Pope, landing clean blows, and the cathedral is halted. It seems like the Queen has arrived. The followers are actually being detained as we speak, and you could say that those followers are depleting the energy of the Pope. The Pope begins to worry that he's going to lose now, and well, he's correct. In a nick of time, Gengar is in front of him and immediately uses Hypnosis and actually lands it. Landing Hypnosis, putting him to sleep, his Salamence grabs the Pope and begins to fly him into the air and has him way up in the sky. Naofumi, using his Gengar, has the levitate ability, so he's actually able to float up with his Gengar, and when they arrive all the way up, he begins to stare at the Pope, and well, the Salamence is threatening to drop him. The Pope says that he can't do that. He can't, kill him like this. This isn't true justice, blah blah blah, and all of the spewing BS that the Pope would say, and Salamence decides to drop him. Naofumi hops on Salamence and waits until the Pope is about to hit the ground, but then saves him, puts him down on the ground, and he says that Naofumi's a fool, but just as he says this, ice begins to appear around the Pope, freezing him in place, and Naofumi slaps him slightly on the face a couple times and says that he needs to wake up, because he is the fool. During this entire time, well, let's just say that the Pope was having a nice little dream, or more like a nightmare. He just wakes up and now he's completely captured in ice and is being taken away. Now with all of his followers and also him being put away in prison or even executed, depending on what they did, which the Pope would definitely be executed, everything seems to be at peace. In which Motoyasu can't really wrap his head around that the fact that Naofumi was the one that helped them so much. But Ren and Itsuki say that is very true. They begin to talk about how they hate to admit it, but frankly Naofumi is outclassing them by a mile. But that will be okay when they all start training even harder. So that's what will lead to the 4 heroes, more or less, council, or the speaking with the 4 cardinal heroes. After everything goes down, and obviously Mine and the king are punished, which Naofumi doesn't really care about them being killed or anything, there's a party going on. And now during this time, Naofumi speaks with the queen and the other 3 heroes. giving off different ways that they actually trained, and Naofumi brings up some of the items that he can actually use. He's not so sure if they can use them, I mean in terms of the healing items most likely, so he's actually going to give them a couple and they're going to test this out. He throws one to Motoyasu, it's called a full restore, in which he's kind of confused about how are they going to test this out, and Naofumi smiles as he throws out his Swampert, and the Swampert hits him right in the face with a hydro pump and begins to basically beat on Motoyasu, and then he stops. He tells Motoyasu to try to use the full restore, and he uses said full restore, and he's completely fine once again. Motoyasu's shocked by this, and the Swampert and Naofumi are just laughing, and so are the other heroes. He throws them some full restores as well, and says that that should help them in these next fights. And he says that he has something called revives, but he's not so sure if that would work on humans, frankly, most likely not. I don't think they can defy death with a little diamond-like thing. And they all agree, saying that let's hope not to get to that point of death, and Naofumi says that's a good idea. And during this time, the queen says that it is a perfect time to head or talk about the Kalmira Archipelago event that is about to go on. That this event will actually give them bonus experience points, so they decide that in the next coming day, they're actually all going to head over there. This time, Naofumi actually still gets no room, at least to himself. He has a lot of people, or a lot of Pokemon, and one other person, so he can just have all his Pokemon in the Pokeballs, which kind of sucks for them because they wanted to hang out on the ship with him, but unfortunately that's not going to happen. But during this time, he does meet with two other people by the name of Lark and Therese, in which they think Naofumi is actually lying about who he is, but they'll later find out that they obviously believed him. Naofumi then decides to head off the boat after they arrive, and begin to say that they probably should have just flew, but I guess a nice little boat trip is peaceful sometimes. And he looks toward Ren as he thinks otherwise, because Ren is kinda throwing up like crazy. Naofumi kinda smiles and he hops on Salamence with Raphtalia, and they fly off to find the best place to train possible. They find a decently high level place, sporting 50s to level 55s, and they begin to basically mow down anything they possibly can see, getting all of his Pokemon up to a level of at least 70 to even 75. This might even be kind of overkill, but Naofumi is actually at a higher level as well, getting Z crystals, I believe, in which he already has, but now he finally has the other crystals that he can use. He can actually have 3 megas at one time now, and also he can use something called a VMAX, in which he doesn't really understand what that even means, but he decides that maybe he should try it out before they, well, you could say, go wild with it. So he decides that the 3 megas that he'll use are going to be his Houndoom, his Swampert, and also his Salamence, because he believes that the levitate ability on Gengar is something that they should really keep. With that in mind, he tries to VMAX his Gengar, and it begins to grow like crazy in size, in which he's confused about. The fact that he can be this big is kind of ridiculous. Even everybody on the island can see his giant Gengar, and his Gengar, to get a quick step up in terms of levels, begins to shoot Shadow Balls at like tons of monsters and killing most of them, and getting a ton of levels from that, getting him to instantly to level 80. His Gengar then begins to shrink in size once again, and now he has a team of all level 75s, but then also a level 80 in his Gengar. Raphtalia also is a pretty high level at this point, and they actually had to get her a class upgrade, well, before this. And now she's at a level of 75-ish. Now with that said though, they decide that they've been training and working really hard for the last 2 days or so they might as well take a little break, in which he lets everybody out of their Pokeball, and his Swampert begins to swim around in the ocean, or the giant, like tons of ocean bay area that is right beside them, in which his Swampert actually finds something while they're on the beach. He finds a temple that is under the water. This temple, for some reason, gives Naofumi a bad feeling, and when they go in, he actually sees that there's a dragon hourglass. This said Dragon Hourglass is a problem because it says that a new wave is going to happen in 48 hours. Naofumi immediately explains this to Raphtalia, hopping on his salamence, and they fly off to the queen, telling her all about this, and she says that she will get a naval fleet done and ready immediately. He thinks this is a great idea, so he flies back and begins to basically situate everybody as soon as possible. Once everyone is situated, he begins to wait for the wave to begin. With the wave beginning in a matter of minutes, he looks to his right to see Lark and Therese sailing in on their own ship. He gets a bad feeling from them, and so does Gengar. Gengar looks over and basically squints his eyes at them, feeling a darker presence within them, or at least darker intent, an intent to maybe even kill. They're not so sure about it, but they'll just have to wait. He tells his Swampert to swim in the water, that he'll be the main course of basically defeating all these monsters, in which his Swampert nods. The Chestnut wants to go in as well, and he says why not. He is super effective on these water-like monsters, so it really wouldn't hurt. He asks his Chestnut if he knows how to swim, and his Chestnut basically begins to just spin his shell and just spins all around the water while on top. And he's kind of impressed by this, but he doesn't really question if he can swim anymore because Chestnut will figure it out anyways. So when the wave begins, his Swampert and his Chestnut single-handedly eliminate all of the smaller fish-like monsters, and the other giant fish begins to be attacked at by the other three heroes. The other three heroes, though, seem to not really be putting a dent in the monster. It seems like the heroes still lack the power they need, in which the Chestnut and Swampert attack the giant monster, throwing it out of the water as his Salamence is told to use Dragon Pulse, and he Dragon Pulses the giant fish straight into the sky, immediately getting beat down by the rest of his Pokemon, and also finished off by his Swampert and also his Chestnut. That is then done and over with. All the Pokemon he has meet up on the giant fish that they just defeated, and Naofumi tells Salamence to come pick him up, in which Salamence, while mid-air, gets striked by a scythe straight through and basically hurts him extremely bad, in which Naofumi decides that he's going to just dive into the water to help him. But what Lark doesn't know is that Naofumi has a full restore. Full restoring his Salamence, he gets back on his Salamence and tells him not to let his guard down anymore. The Salamence agrees. So basically, the only reason why Salamence got hurt there was because Lark used his defensive ignoring attack, but on top of that, Salamence was not even paying attention. He thought the wave was over. So Salamence flies them both out of the water, in which Lark begins to kind of panic, thinking that, well, they just lost their only advantage that they had, and that was the element of surprise. Salamence, now pissed, goes after Lark, grabbing him by the neck, throwing him back at the giant fish, in which all his Pokemon are waiting for him. He looks toward Therese for hoping that she can help him, but Raphtalia is already on the offensive, striking down Therese and keeping up with decent ease. And even when she's hurt, if she's hurt pretty bad, she actually has some full restores on her as well. But currently, she's actually able to fend off Therese relatively well. And Lark realizes that he is in some deep waters, literally. So Naofumi begins to just head over to where Lark is and stands in front of him, asking if this is really what he wants, that they don't really need to fight. But Lark disagrees, saying that this is for his own world and that he needs to kill Naofumi. But just as they are having this conversation, a blast comes sailing at Naofumi from Glass herself. They thought that maybe a distraction plan would work as basically a part 2, but luckily enough, his Chestnut is able to react using Spiky Shield, and remembering how Naofumi wanted him to use it, blocking said attack, and actually it is blocked completely. And Glass is shocked to see this, hoping that she would be strong enough to maybe even penetrate it if possible, but it seems like it works in a whole different way than she believed. Plus, his Pokemon are on a different level, something that he is not ready for, or none of them are even ready for, mega evolving his Salamence, his Houndoom, and even his Swamperts. It's effectively over, and he tells them this, saying that there is no way that they can win, that their teamwork is just nowhere near the ones of his Pokemon, and nowhere near the ones of Raphtalia. His Salamence then flies over to Raphtalia, basically knocking out Therese and dragging her over to them as well, in which Raphtalia feels like she was handling the fights, but the Salamence agrees, but basically murmurs or kind of does his own little cry or Pokemon noise to tell Raphtalia that they needed to get it over and done with. And Therese is laying next to Lark and Glass, and Naofumi gives them a chance that they can leave now, or they can't and they'll just die here or be imprisoned. Frankly, it doesn't matter necessarily to him. He's trying to figure out his own problems in his own world. He agrees that their world most likely are going through some very tragic things, but Naofumi needs to deal with his own world. All this stuff that's going on with him, he has to handle it as well, in which they don't even know what to say. How are they going to accept peace from him after they just tried to kill him twice? It's not like they have a choice, so they do end up accepting that said peace from this whatever legendary Pokemon trainer of some sorts. They then head off as the wave begins to dissipate, and Naofumi shakes his head. The other heroes disagree with the action of what he just did, that they were so outclassed that, well, Naofumi should have just finished off Glass, Lark, and Therese, and that they would have done the job themselves. But Naofumi disagrees that they wouldn't have, and that's, frankly, they're not even close to being strong enough to fight them, and he can tell by this if they can't even defeat that one monster. Naofumi says that they need to handle things in a different direction and listen to everything they have to say, and it's time for Naofumi to grip the reins a little bit harder now. They disagree, saying that they can figure it out on their own, but Naofumi says no, that they need to find the perfect way of training and leveling up between all of them, that they might have different ideas and they have to use each other's ideas to their advantage, in which they still are refusing to do so, but Naofumi says that that is a topic for another time, that he can't handle their bickering at this moment. With the wave over, the queen actually decides to gift Naofumi something, but more specifically actually gift Raphtalia and Naofumi something. It's actually lordship over the place that Raphtalia more or less lived a little while ago, and Naofumi feels honored to basically have this, and even says that maybe they should just transfer it into Raphtalia's name, but Raphtalia says that that shouldn't be the case, that he deserves the lordship over that place, and that he actually has helped them a tremendous amount. And what will happen next? Will his Pokemon be able to rebuild and make everybody realize that they need to all take a part in saving their own world? Will him and his Pokemon be able to protect the entirety of all the countries, or will he need more and more Pokemon to do so? Will the legendary Pokemon trainer be strong enough on his own? Well, frankly, he's made it pretty clear that he can try, but the other help from the heroes seems to be so out of reach that it feels like he is on his own. But that is a story for another day. And that is a wrap for What If Naofumi was the legendary Pokemon trainer. If you enjoyed, make sure to leave a like, sub, comment down below, and leave any suggestions you have for future What Ifs. I want to say sorry that my voice might sound a little different. I've been dealing with allergies for the past couple of days, but I still want to crank out videos for y'all. As y'all know, my other channel got demonetized, so I am full 100% on this channel. So you probably will be seeing a lot of double uploads, which is kind of funny because, yeah, so you'll be seeing a decent amount of double uploads, and I'm just going to be cranking out on this channel. But like I said, hope y'all enjoyed. I hope all y'all have an amazing day. Later. I don't wanna waste what's left.